In this video, we overview word studies and the basic things that we are looking for when we do a word study. I'm going to introduce to you a tool that you might already be familiar with that is incredibly helpful for doing word studies. That is STEPBible. I'm also going to do a little bit of show and tell of one particular lexicon, namely BDAG, and we're going to deal with that same text that we were engaging in the last video, namely Romans chapter 13, verses 1 through 7, making particular comments and sort of completing an abbreviated word study on one of the significant words that we looked at with respect to the world of Romans chapter 13. So when we are doing a word study, we are looking for three different things: the particular words being used, the definitions or glosses of that word or words, and then the uses of that particular word. When it comes to the particular word being used, we are interested in at least two different things. So we're interested in one, the particular word that is being studied, but also we are interested in words that are closely related to that word. And the most closely related word is going to be sort of what is called the nominal or noun counterpart if we are dealing with a verb, or the verbal counterpart if we are dealing with a noun form. So we're going to want to look for both the verb form and the noun form and do a little bit of work on sort of each of those individually. We're of course going to be more interested in the one that is the form of the actual word we are studying, but because the noun and verb form are often so closely related, it often is helpful to almost accomplish two different word studies, one on the noun form and one on the verb form. And sometimes we will find that there are sort of even other closely related forms to the particular word that we are studying. So we're looking for the verb and the noun forms, and then any other closely related words or phrases to the particular word that we are studying. When it comes to definitions, there's sort of two terms that are relevant to definitions. A definition itself is an actual explanation of what the word means. We think of something like pater in Greek. A definition would be someone who has a son, or someone who is the father of another person. So that's what a definition means. It's sort of an explanation of the actual word, whereas a gloss, which is another important term when we are doing word studies, is different possible translations of that particular Greek word. So with something like pater, father is our most common and normal gloss, and we really wouldn't have many other glosses for something like father, unless we were to do something like, other nicknames for a father, papa, or something like this. But with other words, other Greek words, we're going to find that we do have a variety of glosses, a variety of translations, or a variety of English words that we might use for a particular Greek word. And the way that we're going to find these definitions and these glosses is by looking at what are called lexicons or dictionaries. You can think of a Greek dictionary sort of as a lexicon, or you can think of a lexicon, which is going to be the normal name that you come across as a Greek dictionary. So we'll look at one free Greek dictionary or lexicon on STEPBible, and I'll also show you another resource that I've recommended to you several times in several different classes, BDAG, and I'll show you sort of what BDAG looks like with respect to specific words. And then lastly, the third thing that we're looking for when we are doing word studies is how the word is used in a variety of different contexts. So we're looking at how the author uses the word in the particular passage that we are studying. But we also want to see how the author uses that word elsewhere, whether it be in the same work or whether it be in another work that author has authored. So in the case of Paul, we have many different letters, and the same word might not be used identically in the same letter. And the same word might not even be used identically in the same letter. And we'll see this with respect to Romans 13, that the word for authority that Paul uses in Romans 13 is the exact same Greek word as he uses in Romans chapter 9, but he uses it in Romans chapter 9 in a different way than he does in Romans chapter 13. So we're looking at how the author uses the particular word in different contexts, but we're also interested in how other authors use the same word. So how does Paul's use of the word authority compare to other authors' use of the word authority? And what's sort of distinctive of Paul's use of it? Is there something distinctive about it? And what might that tell us about its use in a particular passage? So by way of reminder, this is where we sort of left off in our world of the text video. We practiced engaging the world of the text with respect to Romans chapter 13. We looked at a couple different things. And the first thing that we looked at was repeated words. And we found that authority in English is repeated, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different times. So what we're going to do here is get the different words, definitions, and uses out there to do a sort of abbreviated word study of Romans chapter 13. And the way that we're going to get at this is by engaging a tool called STEPBible. So I'm going to take the video of me away here, and we're going to go looking over at my screen. I invite you to open up to stepbible.org and sort of follow along with me so that you get some guided practice on how to utilize STEPBible to begin to do a word study. So when you open up to STEPBible, you're going to find it looks something like this, or it should look something like this. And I would very much encourage you to sort of mess around and find out what it is that you can do with STEPBible. There's a way in which me guiding you through this is a little bit artificial. The best way to use Bible software, or to get familiar with various kinds of Bible software, is to figure out how it works best for you. But I want to show you sort of the basic ways to begin to mess around with STEPBible and figure out sort of what you can do with respect to word studies. So the first thing we need to do is sort of hone in our search results here and find our passage with the right kinds of texts. So all of this over here on the right side is going to sort of be a guide for how you might use this resource. I'm going to go ahead and close out all of this. This is the guide right here. And what we're going to do is go over here and get first to our reference. So we are in Romans chapter 13, verses 1 through 7. And so then we have it here. It's the default is the ESV. One of the drawbacks of STEPBible is it does not have a sort of full palette of English translations. If you go to something like BibleGateway.com, you're going to find that Bible Gateway has a lot more options for doing translation comparison. So STEPBible isn't necessarily the best tool for translation comparison. If you want to compare the different English translations, I would recommend going to something like Bible Gateway to do that. But we'll stick with the ESV here, and then we're gonna add in our Greek text as well. You have to click up here on ancient, and you'll find several different options for ancient text. There's gonna be two that are directly relevant for us in Greek. The ones that you ought to be using are either the Tyndale House Greek New Testament or the SBL Greek New Testament. My preference on STEPBible, my slight preference is the SBL Greek New Testament. And you can change the order in which they appear. If you want the Greek up first, you can update the display order there. There are also ways I think you can make it side by side rather than top on bottom, but we're just going to stick with it top on bottom here. And so we are here looking at both the English translation and the Greek of Romans 13, 1 through 7. And when you hover over words, you're going to find a couple of different things here. So our word is authority, or authorities in the plural, that we are interested in here. What's really nice about STEPBible is that as soon as you hover over it, it's going to show you everywhere else it's used in that particular passage. And what's one of the interesting things that we might notice right away when we hover over authorities here is that we actually only have 4 occasions of authority in the Greek. So we have exousios in 13:1, exousia again in 13:1. It shows up then one more time in 13:2 and 13:3. So those other uses further down in the passage, you can see like in 13:6 down here, in the Greek, the word actually does not show up again. So it's sort of been implied in the Greek from above, but it actually does not appear there. So that's the first thing we notice there. So we can see the total number of times it is used here. And then once you click on either the English or the Greek, you're going to get further information about the particular word. A sort of, and this is in this way, sort of, a word study has been done for you by a single click in a way, because we're going to get this additional information over here. We're going to get two different sort of lexica for this particular word. The one that is going to be better is going to be the LSJ here, or actually it's going to be more full, I should say. This meaning here is going to give you sort of the very brief overview of different ways or different glosses, different ways we might translate authority. The LSJ dictionary is the Liddell Scott Jones dictionary. This is one of the options for the Greek 1 class. And if you remember from the Greek 1 class, the LSJ lexicon or dictionary is primarily focused on classical Greek rather than on New Testament Greek. So anything we find in here is going to be relevant to the New Testament, but it's not going to be sort of specific to the New Testament and early Christianity. And what we're going to find is that we get different definitions and we get different glosses. And these are all going to be in bold and they're going to be numbered. And so our first one is number 1 up here. They don't actually number the first one. And then sometimes you will have sub sort of entries underneath a particular word here. And so this is going to give us our different options. We have power and authority to do a thing. We might think of that as like permission or right. Number 2, abuse of authority, license, or arrogance. And you'll notice here, every time that exousia, these are references where it appears. So you see that it appears with the word hubris, which we get, our English word hubris from. But it's shortened to just an E. So this E is the abbreviation of exousia here. Office, magistry, consulate, lordship. So this body of magistrates, authorities, this is referring to like specific governmental authorities. It can be used as an honorary title. It can mean an abundance of resources or excessive wealth. And it can also mean pomp. And then under our different definitions and glosses, we get our related words. So we get exesten or exesti from the verb ekon, to be permitted. This is also, if you think about your Greek vocabulary, exesti is it is lawful or it is permissible. Exousiadzo is to have authority, and kat exousiadzo is to rule. And these are the two that would be sort of most relevant for the New Testament. And if you were to click on each one of these, you'd sort of get a word search of where these words appear. Another way to do this, to get a list of where the particular word appears, or the exact word that we are looking at, is to click on this word occurs about 122 times. And when you click on that, it's going to bring up all the occasions of this particular word using the same translations that you were using when you were engaging the text itself. And so you can sort of from here compare how different authors use the word in different kinds of ways. And you can also sort of, if you were to mark down the word counts here, you could see how often a particular author uses that word. So for example, we see Matthew uses it in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 verse 5 or 6, no, more than that, maybe 7, 8, or 9 verses. But then Mark, Mark likes this word a lot. Mark is a shorter book. Sort of as to the overall volume, we would find that Mark probably uses authority more frequently than Matthew does. Luke also particularly likes this word. Luke uses it more often than Matthew does and is a touch longer than Matthew, but I would still suspect that our frequency of the word in Luke is higher than it is in Matthew. John uses it only a handful of times. Scrolling down through Acts, we get to Romans here, and we find that it occurs in Romans 9:21, Romans 13:1, 13:2, and 13:3. So we get those 4 uses in Romans chapter 13, and then we get 1 use in Romans chapter 9. And looking up to Romans chapter 9, we're going to see right away that we have a different translation for the word. So this use of the word is more like permission or right. Doesn't the potter have the right or the permission over the clay to do whatever they want to do with that clay? So a different sense, a different gloss, or a different use of the word in Romans chapter 9 compared to Romans chapter 13, where it does more clearly have sort of a sense of governmental authority. And then if we scroll down, we can see other places that Paul uses Paul uses the term exousia or authority, and it occurs with particular frequency in 1 Corinthians chapter 9. And once again, Paul is using the sort of the right or permission sense of the term rather than the governmental authority sense of the term, which seems to return in 1 Corinthians chapter 11. And then the last thing I want to call our attention to with respect to Paul's usage of the term is that in Ephesians, Paul has a sort of very particular way of using the word authority. He uses it in sort of a cosmic sense. You notice it's translated cosmic powers here, rulers and authorities in the heavenly places, the authority of the air, far above all rule, authority, power, and dominion. Here, Paul is placing Jesus above all other cosmic authorities that might exist. So Ephesians has a particularly sort of heavenly sense of the term authority. And if you were to go down, you could look at the way that it's used elsewhere, not used very often in the so-called Catholic epistles, only 3 times. And then it shows up quite frequently in the book of Revelation. So all of this to say is that you get sort of you get the different uses of this word by different authors in a really sort of handy way, rather than having to go to a concordance and look up every single use of it. You get it all done for you right here. You do have to go then and do the work of sort of comparing and seeing how various authors use the particular word, but you get the words all lined up for you. All right, so I'm going to come back on the screen here and sort of try and summarize some of the things that we noted by looking over at STEPBible on the term authority or exousia. So as to words, we have a couple of different relevant words. I did not include kat exousion here, but we have exousia as a noun form, exestin and exousiadzo as our verbal forms, and a couple of different glosses: authority, power, dominion, ruler. These are all sort of different options by which we might translate the term. As to definitions, to pull out a couple of them: power to do a thing, that is like permission or right as a gloss; abuse of authority or arrogance, so authority, exousia, can have sort of a negative connotation to it, and it can mean governmental authorities in the form of magistrates or authorities. When it comes to different uses, especially in Paul, we have a different use in Romans 9:21 than we do in Romans chapter 13. In Romans 9, Paul uses it to mean right or permission. In Ephesians, it shows up frequently as sort of cosmic or spiritual powers, and then again as right or permission in 1 Corinthians 7 through 9. So the use in Romans 13 is sort of unique to that particular chapter, that this is one particular way that Paul is going to use the word amongst the different ways that it might be used. And I want to show you one more thing here with respect to definitions and uses of particular words. This is sort of a bit of show and tell for this resource, which I have mentioned several times in different classes. That is BDAG, which is sort of the gold standard lexicon when it comes to the Greek New Testament and other early Christian literature. But I just want to show you sort of how BDAG is laid out with respect to particular words. And I apologize, I know it's a little bit small here. I've taken images of the physical print book and put it up here. But what you have is sort of numbers. Each one of these are numbers with first a definition. So you see our first definition for exousia is a state of control over something. And then in italics and in bold, you get 2 different glosses following the definition: freedom of choice or right. So these are 2 different options for how exousia might be translated when it is indicating a state of control over something. And then so as we move on, we're going to get several different definitions. We have 1, 2, and then moving over to here, 3, it looks like 4, 5, somewhere around like 8 or 9 different definitions. And it's a little bit too small for you to see probably. Well, let me actually go ahead and see if I remove myself, if that will improve things for you here. Yeah, perhaps this is a little bit better. We can see, so 7 different definitions, excuse me. And the one that the editors of BDAG believe is most appropriate for Romans chapter 13, verses 1, 2, and 3, where we find our particular use of this word, is the definition bearer of ruling authorities. That is, human authorities, officials, or government. So BDAG sort of makes a claim as to what this the use of exousia in this particular case is, human authorities or government. All right, hello again. So all of this to say, we get sort of additional, and in my opinion with BDAG, we get more clearly presented options for definitions and glosses. One of the really great things about BDAG, from my perspective, is that it is really, really user-friendly, more user-friendly than LSJ, and I think even more user-friendly than what you will find with STEPBible on LSJ. So this is what makes it such a great resource. So to close us out here on word studies, what I want you to do is take a quick lecture pause and try and recall and summarize what we just learned about the particular word authority. And once you come back from that lecture pause, specifically with respect to Romans chapter 13, and once you come back from that lecture pause, I am going to give you my brief summary of what we learned about this particular word. All right, so the way that I have written it, and I will close out by reading this for you, is that in Romans chapter 13, verses 1 through 7, Paul uses the noun authority to refer to earthly governmental figures. This is in contrast to its use in Ephesians, where the term has cosmic connotations, and its use in 1 Corinthians, where it is used to refer to rights, as is also the case in Romans 9:21, the only other place the word appears in Romans. In Romans 13, the word itself does not necessarily have a positive or negative connotation, simply worldly connotations.